Hey guys, what is up, and I welcome each and every one of you to a new League of Legends video. So I want to talk to you guys more about Jhin, and more or less just how he's been so far ever since he's been released onto the live servers. Now whether you've played him, had him on your team, or had him on the enemy team, whether it's ranked or normals, I mean, you've probably experienced that Jhin doesn't feel very overwhelming. In fact, he actually feels quite underwhelming. And it seems like a lot of people are not happy with just how underwhelming or how underpowered he really does feel. I mean, if we were to take a look at the actual statistics, well, you're gonna find out very easily that his win ratios, whether it's in the mid lane or in the bot lane, is quite low. I mean, in the bot lane, having just under 44% win ratio is already considered quite bad, but in the mid lane, he's sitting at 39%, which is ridiculously low. And while compared to other mid laners, he's currently sitting at the number 2 worst win ratio of all the champions being played mid. And if we move over to bot lane, well, you're gonna see that he's actually the lowest win ratio champion of any bot lane ADC type champions or marksmen, including Urgot. Now granted, when looking at this kind of data, you always have to take into consideration the play percent or the play rate the champion is getting, but regardless, I mean, you don't need me to tell you that Jhin feels underpowered. So throughout this video, we'll figure out what about his kit or what about Jhin is just apparently so bad. Why is he having so many issues and having ridiculously low win ratios, while also discussing potential or possible fixes that can make him actually quite viable. So the question I want to ask you guys for this video to write down in the comments below, I'm sure is quite obvious. Do you think Jhin is currently underpowered? And if yes or no, why? And make sure to hit that like button if you enjoy these kind of videos. I know this video is going to be talking about how underpowered he is while I'm having a lot of clips of me just killing people, but again, these clips are there just to make the video and what you're watching actually interesting. If I just have several clips of me dying over and over again, I mean, that's not very fun to watch. So first, let me get this out of the way. I absolutely love Jhin. The champion concept is lovely. He's a lot of fun to play. And I really want this champion to be viable because I want to play him in ranked. So it is kind of a shame that he just is not on par with the current meta and he does feel somewhat weak. So other than the fact that he definitely has issues with his kit, which we'll talk about very soon, I believe a big reason he is currently very weak and has a low win rate is due to him being a new champion. I mean, he definitely feels unique, very different from other champions, except for maybe Graves because of the reload mechanic, but that doesn't really count because Graves is just flat out broken at the moment. And maybe the fact that he has a low win rate is because people are just still not used to his kit whatsoever. Maybe it takes more time. Maybe he needs a team comp specifically focused on peeling him. I mean, there could be many reasons. But other than that, let's actually talk about his kit. What are the flaws? What about his kit is making him feel very weak? So the most obvious thing is, well, I mean, he has no escapes. The current meta has a lot of mobile champions, whether it's champions like Zed or Talon in the mid lane, Riven, Fiora in the top lane, then you have in the jungle maybe Elise, Rek'Sai, Echo even. Or you got those tanky champions like Volibear or Udyr that will just right click on you with their move speed, and they're so tanky that you can't even kill them and there's really nothing you can do. You have to be just several times stronger than they are in order to even have a chance of killing them and maybe even kiting them. Another big issue with his current kit that I've seen a lot of people discuss, even high elo players and streamers, is his reload time. I mean, his reload time is fixed. It is 2.5 seconds and there's nothing you can do about that. Taking a look at Graves, since he's the only other champion with a reload mechanic, I mean, you can reduce the reload time based on your attack speed. So this makes it very awkward in certain scenarios to look for the proper windows of trade, whether it's the laning phase, which isn't a huge problem, or in a team fight, which is where I think the reload mechanic is really becoming a problem. Again, mainly because it is fixed at 2.5 seconds. So when you have in the late game, especially maybe somewhere like 40 minutes plus, you have an enemy ADC with Jinx, chances are her support has the item that gives her extra crit chance, and not only is she outranging you with her auto attacks, but she's attacking probably 3 times faster than you are at least, essentially dealing more DPS within a teamfight than you probably will, unless again you are severely ahead. Because the time that you spend reloading is time that you are probably not doing a lot of damage with your auto attacks, and by that stage of the game, I mean, spells aren't really reliable in terms of damage from an ADC type champion. And 2.5 seconds in a team fight later on into the game, especially again 30 or 40 minutes plus into a game, is a lot of time that you spend missing damage. But the second issue with his reload mechanic is essentially the second part of it, where if you have maybe 2 more shots left to fire but you don't fire at anything and you're just walking around, in 10 seconds he will automatically reload. Now I could be wrong, but this also feels like it takes a little too long in order to make him auto reload whenever you still have a few shots left. But another issue within his kit that I feel like is kind of a problem is his passive that gives him the move speed whenever he crits. Now I might be wrong when I say this, but personally whenever I'm playing Jhin, until it's very late into the game, this passive for the move speed feels absolutely trivial. It almost feels like it's not even there. And this was supposed to be the main way Jhin can more or less self-peel just by critting and getting this move speed and running away from the target, but it just doesn't feel like it's enough at all. Next I want to talk about his Q, which I think of all the abilities, this one probably has the least amount of issues except for maybe his ultimate, because well, I truly think this is a pretty good ability, but only in the laning phase, because stacking up the damage on the Q in the laning phase on minions and having the 4th one go on the champion isn't really all that difficult. But at the same time, that also feels like that's the big problem. The Q ability just feels much too reliant on stacking its damage up, and if you don't stack it up, it doesn't feel like it really does a whole lot. And when the team fights start, chances are, especially if it's somewhere around Dragon Pit or Baron Pit or somewhere in the jungle, you're not going to be able to stack up the Q damage unless you are very, very lucky. Oh yeah, and by the way, his passive also reduces his crit damage by 25%. Now this is absolutely massive. Critical strike stats are very, very important right now on ADC type champions because of just how easy it is to gain these stats from the several items that offer it. However, this reduced crit damage hits him a bit harder than you may think. And the reason for this is because Jin's critical strike modifier is apparently a multiplicative reduction. So a standard champion without Infinity Edge gets 200% bonus damage on a critical strike, but for Jhin apparently it's only 150, and if he does get Infinity Edge, instead of being 250, it's only 187.5%. Then we have his W, which for the longest time I thought was just an amazing spell. I absolutely loved it, and I mean for the most part I still think it's pretty cool. The range on it is lovely, the fact that you can snare enemy opponents if an ally has damaged them is also very, very good. So don't get me wrong, those parts of the W ability are fantastic. However, when it comes to actually being able to do damage, his W doesn't feel like it really does a lot of damage. Now if you compare it to something like Jinx, you'll notice that not only is the ratio scaling on it much poorer, but the base damage on it as well is much lower. So sometimes it really just feels like the purpose of his W is just strictly for the snare or the root, because the damage is very mediocre. I mean, you can't really rely on it for poke. I mean, if you did, I guess it would be pretty overpowered, but again, it is a little bit of a shame that it only feels like it's reliable for the snare, especially when his Q doesn't feel very reliable in a teamfight to begin with, and you have his E ability, which I mean is just pretty bad. So speaking of his E ability, let's talk about this next. Now, oh man, this is a very disappointing one. I mean, at first I thought it was fantastic, but as you play him more, as you play him on the live servers against actually really good players, or at least diamond level players in ranked, you realize that this ability isn't really as good as you may think. So only the person that actually activates the trap on the enemy team gets Jin's W's passive mark applied to them. But that's the least of our worries. I mean, the fact that this ability only slows, and not really for a whole lot, and it takes 4 seconds to actually do the damage and detonate is ridiculous. I'm literally seeing people without boots and without any tenacity reduction or whatever just simply walk right out of the ability's range and take no damage, and I mean, it's just pretty useless. So far, any other trap in my mind, like Caitlyn's, Nidalee's, Teemo's Shrooms, they do damage instantly. They have an instant CC, they have something that is absolutely instant and is somewhat reliable. And unfortunately, Jin's is, well, not that reliable. I mean, the slow is quite useless, it doesn't really help a lot, the damage is near impossible to actually land, and even when you do hit an enemy opponent with your E damage, I mean, chances are you're mastering it third, so the damage isn't even there. And the final issue with his kit is going to be his ultimate, which again, I actually think for the most part is fine. I mean, the ability feels very, very rewarding when you snipe someone down from afar. The slow effect is great, the damage it offers is quite good as well, especially on lower HP targets. So for the most part, I have to say this ability is quite good. But the biggest issue, I think, without question, is the fact that it feels very buggy still. I mean, apparently they fixed it, but there's still many times where champions are teleporting around within my ultimate's vision. This can get very, very annoying, and landing your ability on a target that's teleporting is very difficult. So those are more or less the issues I feel like he has currently with his kit. Now, some of the fixes that I have written down are as follows. For his E ability, I mean, maybe it can either slow more, maybe it can instantly snare but do less damage, or just somehow become more useful because it doesn't feel useful at all right now, other than just providing a bit of vision. Maybe making his W so that it has a flat snare at all durations, so similar to what they did with Elise's Cocoon could be a pretty cool fix. And his ult, well, I mean, you just need to fix that damn thing because it is still very buggy and it's kind of annoying. Then you have his passive with the reload mechanic. Even though I like the idea, his auto attack range is a default. I mean, it's nothing crazy, it's very similar to almost any other ADC, but he has 0 self peel and his reload time takes much too long. And the fact that there's nothing you can do about it feels very bad. Feels bad, man. So overall, it's just way too difficult to self peel or kill someone that's diving on you, whether it's a tank or assassin, or to really have any chance to do anything about them. His reload is a big issue and his E is more or less useless. So that is about it for this video, guys. That's my little rant talking about Jhin, because man, I really want him to be a very good champion, or at least consider to be an okay champion. Again, many things I mentioned could be wrong, maybe it just simply takes more time to figure him out. Either way, let me know in the comments what you think, share with your friends, like the video if you enjoyed it and want more like this. Here are my favorite answers from the previous video's question, what's your favorite LCS team, and make sure to check out my other videos as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace!